Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to be taking a look at some of the best games available on the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5. All 25 of these games will be available on both platforms, so we're not going to be talking about PlayStation 5 exclusives today, but I do have a separate list if you want to look at PlayStation 5 games specifically, and I will leave a link to that in the description below. But the thing about the PlayStation 4 in specific is that this is going to be a console that I think for a lot of people is going to go down as one of their favorite consoles of all time. This is a platform with a ton of great games, especially when it comes to their first-party studios, and I think this list will highlight both of those. With that in mind, though, always keep in mind that this is only my opinion, but other than that, let's just go ahead and get right into it. And to start things off, we're going to be talking about the newly released Tales of Arise. This is a long-running action JRPG franchise, but with Tales of Arise, they really stepped up their game here. They completely overhauled the visuals with Unreal Engine, and this game looks absolutely gorgeous with its art style. This is one of the better AAA JRPGs on the market right now. It has fun combat where you can play as a team and do these insane-looking combos, and it also has an interesting story. In typical fashion, when it comes to JRPGs, you do play as an amnesic character, though the overall premise with you playing as a slave that can feel no pain is really interesting, especially with the ongoing dynamic across all of the characters. And here I have yet another new entry to this list, being Kena Bridge of Spirits, and I think a lot of people kind of looks at this as only a PlayStation 5 game, but actually it is also available on the PlayStation 4. And the first thing anybody and everybody notices about this game is that it is absolutely stunning thanks to those Pixar style of graphics. It really is just one of the better looking games on the market thanks to its art style here, but it's also a really good game. It actually plays out kind of like a classic Zelda-style game, but its combat is surprisingly very in-depth. Yes, you do play in a semi-open world where as you get more abilities, you can kind of progress further and further, but when it comes to its combat, it can actually be quite challenging. That is a bit of a surprise, but when you combine that with its fun platforming, its good puzzles, and just its overall world and design, this is a fantastic overall game. One game that exploded on a PlayStation 4, in large part because it actually released directly into PlayStation Plus, was Rocket League. This is a game that's going to be timeless with fans playing it for years and years, as it really is one of the best sports games to ever exist. I think when you first look at it, it almost looks kind of goofy because, I mean, it's just these little cars and they push a soccer ball into a goal, and it all seems real strange, but when you actually play it, it is so insanely fun, whether you're a newcomer or somebody who's been playing for years and years. And that is one of the things about Rocket League. This game is incredibly deep, and it involves a lot of skill if you want to be good at this game. Now, you can just jump in and have a ton of fun right away, and that's one thing that's just so beautiful about this game, because anybody and everybody can enjoy it, but it's got a very high ceiling for players who really want to put the time into it. In that regard, it's just like a sport. Kingdom Hearts is one of the more interesting franchises that I have played in gaming just as a whole. It's this mix of Square Enix characters with Disney, and it seems like an odd mix, but it actually works really well. Yes, the stories are absolutely convoluted at times, and all of the Kingdom Hearts games are important, including the games in between 1 and 2, and then 2 and 3. Those are actually important to the story. And really, I do think that these games are magical experiences, and I think that every gamer should at least try them once. Crash Bandicoot is finally back, and in a very big way, with not only the Crash Insane trilogy, but also with Crash Bandicoot 4. Yes, the original Crash trilogy finally got the sequel that it truly deserved, and really, I think Crash Bandicoot 4 is better than what I had even expected. Now, I've always just in general found Crash Bandicoot to be really unique when it comes to 3D platformers, because not really any other game plays just like this series, but with Crash Bandicoot 4, it has so much going for it. It's challenging, you have quite a few abilities to play around with that really changes how the game is played level to level. There's a ton of things to collect if you want to 100% this game. And there's also multiple characters with their own unique abilities. When you combine that with its great level design, this is a must-play 3D platforming series. Now, with that in mind, I would also recommend Spyro Reignited, which is another remade series that includes Spyro 1, Spyro 2, and Spyro 3. And here I have yet another remake being Shadow of the Colossus, though I am also including The Last Guardian. Both of these games do share the same world, though they are vastly different in terms of gameplay. What they do share in common, though, is that they're really unique and memorable experiences. With Shadow of the Colossus, this is a game that released back in the PlayStation 2 days, but with this remake, it looks absolutely stunning. And the gameplay really holds up more now than ever. You travel across its vast world to take down all these colossal monsters. You're going to have to climb these monsters and attack their weak point, and it almost gives it this puzzle element as you navigate each one of these beasts. It's just an overall memorable experience, and I can say the same when it comes to The Last Guardian. Once again, you do have that atmospheric world, but this time it's more of a puzzle platformer. You do have an AI companion this time with this dog-like creature, and you'll have to work together to solve the various puzzles across its world. Even though Trico doesn't always necessarily listen to you, thanks to its overall atmospheric world and the bond that you share with Trico, it's once again another memorable experience. On the surface, the Yakuza franchise looks a little goofy, and in a lot of ways they really are. For the most part, these games do play as a beat-em-up style game with some RPG elements thrown in, and its combat is just so crazy over the top. You're going to be picking up bikes and street signs or whatever else you can find and beat up all of the people in your path. It can be quite crazy, and that goes for the mini-games as well. There's plenty of mini-games throughout its city, but even though it does have some goofy elements to it, the stories in these games are nothing short of exceptional. I am constantly blown away by the stories in these games and all of the twists and turns along the way. Now, with this being a long-running series, though, I would recommend starting off with Yakuza 0 or Judgment. Judgment does have completely separate characters, so either one of these games would be a great starting point. Remedy Entertainment has always been well known for their single-player games such as Alan Wake and Quantum Break, but their best yet might very well be Control. Control is like this gorgeous-looking third-person Metroidvania style of game, and it is just so mesmerizing going through the building in this world as it constantly morphs and transforms. Yeah, the building itself is fascinating, but then there's also the gameplay, which, like I said, does have this Metroidvania style feel to it. You're going to have all these different superpower style of abilities, and your weapon itself can transform as well. So you're going to be navigating this Metroidvania style of world in a highly polished AAA style of game. Now, if you do like Remedy's games, though, I would also recommend Alan Wake, which just got a remaster that for the first time ever will be available on a PlayStation console. You don't often see a lot of these fast-paced first-person shooters anymore, and it almost feels like a retro style of gameplay, but with Doom Eternal, it brings these games back in a big way. Doom Eternal, from a mechanical standpoint, is easily one of the best first-person shooters, not just of recent years, but really of all time. This game handles amazingly well. The guns feel good, your movement is fast and precise, the platforming is also surprisingly really well done in Doom Eternal also, and you also have to play smart in this game. There's a real strategy when it comes to Doom Eternal. You're not just going to be able to go in there and mindlessly shoot everything, but you're going to have to think on your feet and fast to clear a room of all of your enemies. And here I grouped together a couple of competitive multiplayer games. Both of these do actually play quite a bit different, one being Rainbow Six Siege and then the other Overwatch. Now, Overwatch is a hero shooter with each character playing vastly different from one another. You're gonna have your DPS characters for damage, your support for healing, and then you also have tanks to kind of hold the front line. Each character is so brilliantly designed in this game, both from a personality standpoint as well as with their gameplay. You're really going to have to work as a team to win in this game. Now, that can cause some frustration among fans when somebody's not exactly pulling their weight or doing what they're supposed to do, but it is easily one of the best competitive shooters on the market. Now, as for Rainbow Six Siege, this game is a little bit more tactical. Once again, each character does play vastly different from one another, but this game is a little slower paced, and instead of focusing on abilities and ultimates, instead with Siege, you take advantage of the different gadgets that you have at your disposal. Once again, just like Overwatch, this game will require a lot of communication in order to win. Over the years, PlayStation has become well known for their single-player content with fantastically written stories, but one thing that I don't think that they get enough credit for is for their open-world games. They actually do a really good job with their open-world games, and I think Ghost of Tsushima really showcases that. This game is set in feudal Japan and is very atmospheric. I mean, truthfully, I think it's just one of the prettiest games, period, especially when it comes to its vegetation. But because of its world is just so well detailed, it really makes you feel as if you're there. This also goes for its story and combat. You do play as a samurai in this game, but you get to choose how you want to play. You either have the choice to fight like a samurai and face your enemies face to face, or instead you can take more of that stealth-based approach. Either way, both playstyles feel really good, especially as you unlock more abilities throughout the game. Now, one of the more addicting games on this list would actually be Monster Hunter World. This is a franchise that's really exploded in recent years worldwide, and it's easy to see why. I think Monster Hunter World makes you feel like you're in a real, lived-in, breathed-in ecosystem. The monsters feel very realistic to fight, and that is kind of the goal with this game. You're going to be hunting down these behemoths of monsters, and each one of them feel completely unique. They each have their own personality and traits, and not only do they interact with you, but they also interact with the environment and other creatures within the world. Again, it feels like it's an actual ecosystem, but this would mean nothing if it wasn't for its excellent combat. You have plenty of weapons to play around with depending on your playstyle, and it's also a great cooperative experience. You can bring up to 4 players in any given hunt. Last year making this list, I somehow forgot to include Horizon Zero Dawn, and yet you all absolutely let me know about that, and I do apologize about that, and it will not happen again because Horizon Zero Dawn is an excellent game. Just like Ghost of Tsushima, this is another PlayStation first-party game with a great overall open world. And in terms of settings, this is actually one of my favorite worlds in video games right now. They actually combined a prehistoric setting with more of a cybernetic futuristic style, and it just pops. It's just such a great world to explore with all these cybernetic robot-like dinosaurs, and you can even ride around on some of them. But it goes beyond just its world because it's also a pretty fun game as well. Your main weapon is a bow and arrow in this game, though you can get up close and personal and use some melee-style tactics as well, and there's even a stealth aspect when it comes to Horizon Zero Dawn. Depending on the situation, you're going to have to take advantage of each different playstyle, and that is something about this game. It's always fun, and it also knows how to mix things up. One franchise that has really surprised me in recent years would be Nier. When the original Nier came out, it wasn't exactly well received, but with Nier Automata, that kind of changed everything. Honestly, if I just had to describe this game in just one word, it would be masterpiece. The hack and slash style of gameplay is fun, the world is mesmerizing, the music is absolutely amazing, and it's really some of my favorite in any video game ever. And then there's also its story, which is fascinating. Now, that is something that I will say with this game, you do have to reach the end credits multiple times before you see its official ending. It does not end on those first credits. Each playthrough will be different, so do keep that in mind. Now, there's also Nier Replicant Remaster, which I would also highly recommend. I don't think it's as good as Automata because it becomes a little bit more repetitive, but both these games, again, are masterpieces. Capcom brought Resident Evil back in a big way last generation with the PlayStation 4, as they have multiple games that really should all be included on this list. Not only are they remaking the classics such as Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, but they also have a couple of new ones such as Resident Evil 7 and then Village. All of these games are excellent in their own ways. Now, I will say my favorite is probably Resident Evil 2, but Resident Evil 7 and Village is really interesting as well. Unlike the classics, these are not set in third person, but rather in first person. Some fans will view that as more immersive, especially when it comes to a horror style of game. Other than it being set in the first-person view, though, these games do play out like your classics. You're going to be hunted down by the terrors in the world. There's going to be plenty of puzzles to solve to navigate the world, and it's got those highly intriguing stories. And to round off the top 10 here, I have The Last of Us 1 and 2. Now, the second one is going to be a little bit more controversial, as some fans absolutely love that game, and then others, well, they hated it. So it really depends on which side you fall on here. But what I will say about The Last of Us Part 2 is that this is one of the most personal and detailed games I have ever played. In terms of its animations and world, it is extremely impressive, to say the least. I don't know if I've ever played a game that's made its close and personal combat feel so realistic to a point that it may actually be unsettling for some fans. It's dark and it's gritty. Now, whether you like the story, that's completely up to you, but I will say that the original Last of Us, that one was much more well received in terms of its story, and I do think that that is a must play for any fan of single-player games. And here I have a combination of some turn-based JRPGs being Persona 5 and Dragon Quest XI. Now with Persona 5, it's more of a modern take on the genre with that social aspect blended in. You do play as a high school student, and you're going to have to manage your time with fighting in dungeons, creating bonds with the characters within this world, and then also your school life. This can be very rewarding with its story, but it also does have well-made dungeons and combat that has you taking advantage of different demons. It does have that monster-catching aspect to it, with all the demons having their own unique abilities. Now, as for Dragon Quest XI, this is more of a retro-style JRPG, and it really does feel like it came straight out of the 90s. If you do like retro-style JRPGs with grand adventures, then Dragon Quest XI is a game that you're going to love. When Insomniac Games announced that they were making an exclusive Spider-Man game for the PlayStation 4, that was a little surprising, but they knocked it out of the park with this game. In fact, in terms of a Spider-Man experience, I will stand by this time and time again. I think that this game is the best Spider-Man experience, including movies and shows. The story is so well done in this game. I love the characters, and it's got that Insomniac flavor when it comes to its gameplay. You can have plenty of gadgets to play around with, and it's smooth and fun combat. And also, being Spider-Man, it actually makes its open world a joy to explore. In a lot of open worlds, in my opinion, it's a little annoying traveling to one location to one location, but it never feels that way with Spider-Man. Now, if you do find yourself liking this game, I would also go ahead and recommend Spider-Man Miles Morales, which is a smaller scope follow-up. And here I have a couple of insanely creative 3D platformers, being Psychonauts 2 and then It Takes Two. Now, It Takes Two is a mandatory cooperative game, though they handle this very well. It does come with a free friend pass, so you can invite anybody online, and they do not have to pay anything. And really, this is one of the most creative games that I've ever played, both in terms of level design as well as with its gameplay. They do a great job at making you work together as a team in this game, and there's always just something a little bit different to do. It also has a well-made story, but you can also say the same thing when it comes to Psychonauts 2. If you do want more of a single-player style of game, then Psychonauts 2 fits the bill perfectly. This game actually has a deep and engaging story that kind of focuses on mental issues. You don't usually see strong stories like that in 3D collectathon platformers, but Psychonauts 2 is just a completely new breed. This game's not only strong mechanically, but just like It Takes Two, it's also insanely creative, and in terms of gameplay, you're really not going to get much better when it comes to the collectathon 3D platforming genre. The first franchise that I always think about when talking about PlayStation is Uncharted. These are actually some of my favorite games of all time, as they have brilliant level design, the characters are so lovable and charming, and it also has great gameplay, mixing in third-person shooting, platforming, and then puzzle elements. In many ways, Uncharted is the staple of cinematic experiences and has inspired a generation of single-player games. And with that in mind, a game that actually plays very similar to Uncharted is also Tomb Raider, which I would highly recommend. Now, I think this series is a little bit darker than Uncharted, but both are excellent in their own ways. There's been a lot of remakes in recent years, and Final Fantasy VII shows why this is such a good thing. Not only is this a remake of a beloved classic, but it also expands on its story and characters in a major way. To just put things into perspective, the original Final Fantasy VII took about 36 hours to complete, but with the remake, and this is just part 1 that takes about 15% of the original game, well, it typically takes around 33 hours to complete, and that just kind of goes to show you how much they expanded the story of this game. And I have to say, they masterfully did this. Not only did I come away engrossed by the story and main characters of this game, but also some of the side characters that didn't really have much of a story in the original came away as some of the best parts of this game. I mean, I really don't think that you can do stories and characters much better than Final Fantasy VII, and I think the remake really highlights that. Now, with that said, Final Fantasy is a beloved franchise for a reason, and really I would recommend pretty much most of the mainline entries, whether it be 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 14, or 15, which are all available on PlayStation. And here are the From Software games, which are so good that they basically created their own genre, whether that be with Dark Souls, Bloodborne, or with Sekiro. All of these games excel when it comes to the combat. Now, the things that all three of these games share in common is that they're incredibly challenging, they have brilliant enemy design, and they're set in interconnected worlds. But outside of that, they do have some differences. Dark Souls is a little slower pace with lots of weapons, whereas Bloodborne is a little faster but has fewer weapons, and it's set in more of a gothic style world. And then you have Sekiro, which really focuses on a parry-based system and much more action-driven. All three of these games, though, are superb at what they try to do. In a lot of these open world games, it almost seems like they have to make some sacrifices in order to get the worlds big and expansive, but with Red Dead Redemption 2, it almost contradicts that. This game is set in the Wild Wild West, and not only is its world massive, but there are a ton of things to do. Whether you want to fish, hunt, rob banks, or whatever, you have plenty of things to do within its world. The story itself is also highly entertaining with plenty of twists and turns along the way, and I have to really applaud the voice acting in this game. They really did a great job with that, and by the end of this game, even though you do play as a bad, quote-unquote bad character, you really find yourself drawn to this character the more you play throughout the game. Now, the one thing that always stands out to me when it comes to this game, though, is its animations. Just like The Last of Us Part 2, they are so meticulous with every little movement in this game. It does make it a little slower pace, but wow, is it impressive. I always explain God of War as this perfect single-player experience, and I really do mean that. This is a game that really surprised me on the PlayStation 4 because I didn't really love the original trilogy. Yes, I think that those are fun games, but I didn't care about Kratos, the main character, himself. I didn't really find him all that likable, but here in the new God of War, I came away really liking his character. It is a complete 180 on my emotions with him before. He plays as a father in this game, and you really connect with him, but then it also has that really fun combat once again, and somehow they just seem to have ramped it up even more. I think the axe in this game is one of the most satisfying weapons in video games, period. As you kind of throw this thing and then draw it back, kind of like Thor, it's just so punchy and it feels fantastic. Even the level design is brilliantly done with its hub world, and it also has some light RPG elements. Again, I think that this is the perfect single-player experience, whether that be with its story or with its gameplay. And at the number one spot, I have none other than The Witcher 3, which I think is going to go down as one of the all-time great RPGs ever made. The 90s had some great RPGs that fans talk about all of these years later, and I think The Witcher 3 is so good that it's going to be in that category where people who didn't play games today will be talking about it 15 to 20 years from this point. And that's for various reasons. It has an engrossing world that begs to be explored. It has a unique style of combat that almost feels like a dance where you mix some light magic with hack and slash style of gameplay, and it also allows you, the player, to have a direct impact on its world. The decisions that you have to make in this game are actually thought-provoking. Sometimes you're going to find yourself really picking between the lesser evils, and you're just going to kind of see what happens to the world after you make that very tough decision. The side missions in this game are also done very well, and I would actually say some of the side missions in this game are actually better than main quest lines in other games because they really are that good. So really, The Witcher 3 not only goes down as one of the greatest RPGs ever made, but really just one of the greatest games ever made. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode, but if I missed any of your favorite games, make sure to let me know in the comments below. With that said, if you did like this video, make sure to hit that bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.